Happy Monday, everybody, and it is a real good Monday. We're back with you, Courtney Mims, alongside Mike Irwin for another edition of Ask Mike. And Mike, we have a jam-packed show today. That's because all across the board in Razorback Athletics, they had a pretty good weekend. So we're going to dive right into that, starting with, of course, baseball. And we're hearing from a very controversial question asker off the bat. It's Mousetown. And he asked, okay, you guys have everybody mad at me. So here's something nice. Our pitching staff is as good as I've seen. Hats off to Matt Hobbs. We could win the College World Series with these guys. But hold on. He goes on to say, but not with the strikeout, ground out batters we have. We have two hitters, Kendall Diggs and the new third baseman. The middle part of our lineup killed us against Okie State. Our hitting coach is not cutting it. Yeah, I'm mean again.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too hard on Mousetown this week, and I'll tell you why. Because last night I watched Dave Van Horn's post-game interview after the Michigan game. So the 3 games were over. And the media guys were kind of trying to steer him into all the great pitching things that had happened over the weekend, and boy, isn't the pitching great. And he wasn't having any of it. He kept going back to hitting, and he was not happy. And he ended up pointing out that he had made big changes in the lineup for the Michigan game, and they didn't work out. And he said, look, when you have options at each position, if somebody's not hitting, you just go with the other position. So I thought I could do that. They didn't hit the ball either. So he said, basically, they're going to go into week 3, which is this week, with about half the lineup unsettled. Now, I'm looking at this lineup. You got 3 guys batting decently. You got Jared Sprague-Lott, who's the third baseman, and he may end up, because he made errors, he may end up as the DH, because they had problems with him as a position player. But he's hitting .429, Kendall Diggs .370, and Ben McLaughlin .333. After that, Wilmsmeyer, Holt, White, Alloy, Jones, and Helfrich. Here's the way it goes. 269, 250, 208, 167, 133, 83.
Oh, who's 83?
That's Ryder Helfrich.
Oh, okay.
Now look, here's the real problem. And I didn't go into all this, but it's the batting average with runners in scoring position. Those guys that we mentioned, especially Alloy.
Oh, no.
Now, so I understand why Mousetown is upset, and Dave Van Horn was trying to make a point. But when you talk to people that watch baseball a lot, especially college baseball, what they will tell you is that what tends to happen as the season starts is you tend to get good pitching numbers because the arms are fresh, and then as the season goes along and those arms aren't as fresh, your pitching numbers are going to change a little bit toward the negative. It doesn't mean they'll get bad, but it doesn't mean that they're not generally going to get better. They're going to kind of go downhill a little bit because of the wear and tear. Your arms get tired. You may have a few little aches and pains. Hitting generally does get better, especially with Arkansas. And 2 years ago, for instance, they were very similar to where they are now after this Arlington tournament. And those guys not only made it to Omaha, they came within 1 win of making it into the championship series of the College World Series. And that was not a good hitting team at the start. So it is too early to panic. Now, what I would say is that I watched these guys in fall ball, went over to a lot of scrimmages. Alyssa sent me over to a lot of them, and in preseason. And one of the things I remember saying on this show was that Dave Van Horn had options at every position, just like he said. If this guy's not batting well, you just put this guy in there. And I felt like I went point by point and named most of them. That's not working out right now. So that's why he's a little bit concerned. But I think what you're going to see is they'll start to come around a little bit. And I don't know why this is happening. I mean, I was looking at Alloy in those preseason scrimmages. The guy was knocking the home runs, knocking the ball all over the place. And now he's just swinging at air. So maybe he's over anxious. I don't know. He's had 1 good game where he hit the ball, but other than that, and Hudson White, who's talking to my buddy at Texas Tech, he said, well, he's not really a hit for average guy. He'll hit about 260, 270, which is not bad, but he's not hitting that well right now. He's like 208. Yeah. But he said, what he will do is hit home runs, and he's not hitting home runs. That's the other thing. They've hit 4 home runs. So I'm not going to criticize Mousetown for being mean this time because Dave Van Horn was being mean
Yeah,
when he was talking about these guys.
I think Dave Van Horn would probably agree with Mousetown. I hate to say that, but I think he would probably read that question and go, yeah, I agree with you there. And he even talked about that in the postgame. Like you said, we have a lot more questions when it comes to concerning the pitching and the hitting. So we're going to move on from that and go into Jay Kelly 107's question, who asks, Arkansas has one of the best teams in collegiate baseball. I would think we could have any hitting coach we wanted. Is Nate Thompson a great coach or a great recruiter, or maybe both?
I mean, it depends on who you talk to. Most people will say, yes, he's a recruiter. They won't deny that. Where the disagreement comes in is with his philosophy, which is a power-oriented philosophy, which supposedly was developed from Major League Analytics, in which they determined in the major leagues that you're better off when in the course of a long season trying to hit more home runs and have less team batting average. In other words, let's say you have a team batting average of, let's go to the college level. Arkansas, typically when they had good teams, you go back several years ago, they'd be batting anywhere 280 to 300. So let's take a batting average, team batting average like that, and maybe you hit 50 home runs. Okay, there was a year in which they had over 100 home runs, but the team batting average is more like 270, 260. So there are people that are saying those analytics may work for the major leagues, but here's what happens in the college game. These guys aren't good enough developed as hitters yet, and they get to the plate with runners in scoring position, and instead of trying to drive those people in, they're trying to hit home runs.
Yeah.
And so they end up hitting over the top of the ball, which gives a ground ball effect, or they end up hitting under it, which pops it up. They don't drive the ball into the gaps. And so you get a lot of guys left on base. And that's one of the issues right now. Arkansas's left 60 batters, I think, on base in 7 games. That's a lot. And so it depends on who you're talking about. But the bottom line on this is, do you think if Dave Van Horn didn't buy into this philosophy, he wouldn't go tell Nate Thompson, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to go back to playing small ball. And he hasn't done that. So
yeah,
that's the bottom line on that.
Absolutely. And it's kind of one of those things we've talked about, living and dying by the home run. But I think I even told you it was that Oklahoma State game where they're in that battle with them. And I'm going, why does it feel like you guys are trying to hit home runs? I mean, was it Ben McLaughlin who was just shy of it? It was like, right there. But why are you trying to do that? Why can't we go back to small ball in those situations? I'd like to talk to DVH about that. Get his name. It'd be cool to talk to Nate Thompson as well on the philosophy there too.
But they need to talk about it.
Yeah, they do, absolutely. Hog Redneck asks, how soon do we get Peyton Stovall back? That's a great question. It can't be soon enough. Our 250 team batting average is scary bad. Okay.
Depends on, again, how quickly he recovers from this broken bone in his foot, or if it's bones. I'm not sure if it was 1 or 2. He was originally projected to be out 4 to 6 weeks, so he's been out 2 weeks. So he could be 2 weeks away from playing or a month away. And I agree, he needs to come back sooner than later. What they need him for is to be the leadoff hitter. And he's not a guy, he can hit home runs, but he's a guy that can drive the baseball, and he has a habit of driving it into the gaps and also hitting sharp ground balls instead of these weak things we've been seeing lately that will find the gaps and go through quickly so, the infielders can't get to the ball. And so I think he's definitely what they need right now.
Yeah, and I think when we first heard about that, our Alyssa Orange actually broke the news that he was going to be out 4 to 6 weeks. A lot of people were saying that was going to be right around the time SEC play was ramping up. So I think there's a chance he could be back for SEC play.
Let's just hope it's 2 weeks.
Yeah, let's just hope it's 2 weeks.
It'll be before SEC play if it's 2 weeks.
That would be very nice. If that's the case, he's definitely been drinking his milk, right? And the broken bones are healing pretty quickly. Kate Money says, no reason to fret, ladies and gentlemen. This pitching is immaculate. The defense is elite. And once the bats warm up, and they will, this team is as advertised. Go ahead and book your hotels. #Omahogs.
Okay, he's either going to be right, or in a few weeks we're going to call him a sunshine pumper, somebody that pays no attention to what's really going on and just always positive. And I don't know which it is. It depends. Look, responding to something like that depends on what you are as a fan. We know that. Some fans are always going to see the negative and worry, and others are going to be too pumped up and sunshine pumpers. I prefer kind of a balance where you're not totally ignoring danger warnings, but you're not freaking out either. So we'll see if he's right, but he could be right. I've had a lot of people tell me over the last 24, 36 hours talking about this. They've pointed out other seasons that Arkansas has had where the hitting begins to come around about the third or fourth week of the season.
Hog Killer has this reaction to Hagen Smith's complete domination of Oregon State. That was a once-in-a-lifetime performance against a stacked lineup of 7 guys hitting over 335 and had hit 14 home runs and 11 doubles in their first 5 games. I've been around this game 60-plus years. That was unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree with that. And what made it so unbelievable was not that he did it, it's who he was doing it against. Because you can go out and pitch a no-hitter against a team that can't hit. You know, I've seen that happen before. This was a team that had 4 guys in their lineup that were hitting over 400. 4. So that means every time you cycle through that lineup, you face 4 guys in there that are all batting over 400. They'd hit 19 home runs as a team. That's 5th in the nation. Here's what he did, though. He gave up 2 hits. He walked a guy and hit a guy. So he faced 21 batters, struck out 17 of them. 17 out of 21 guys. That's pretty amazing.
That's amazing.
I mean, when it sinks in, and when you, again, and it's not that he did it, it's who he did it to. Because a lot of people feel like that Oregon State's a College World Series team, especially with their hitting, and you just went up against the best maybe there is overall. Certainly won. And that's the other thing. You go and you look up NCAA stats and you see a lot of wacko teams because they played nobody. You'll see these ridiculous team batting averages and whack-a-mole number of home runs. And then you go look at who these teams played and they played nobody. So I'm telling you, everybody that I respect as an observer of college baseball knows how good Oregon State is this year, knows how good their lineup is, and they were blown away by what he did. The tragedy of it, and I've seen this over and over again, is people saying to ESPN, well, what are you doing? You're starting to televise more college baseball games. You need to pay attention. This game should not have been just a flow baseball thing.
Well, isn't it because, and
it's because of the stadium they're playing in.
Exactly.
So it's not the NCAA's fault. They can't, I don't think they would have let the ESPN come in there.
No, because I believe Flow Sports has the rights to those events. They
tournament.
sold them the rights.
And they're going to do it for 3 weeks. They've got 3 consecutive weeks that they're doing that. So it's just one of those things. You either pay it for Flow Sports or you don't.
Yeah, or you just watch an illegal stream. I didn't say that on the show, but there are people that are illegally streaming it.
We have a Flow Sports account, but I was at home because it was my 2 days off. And Alyssa and Orange and I were playing tag team because she was trying to watch it and I was trying to watch it. And I'd knock her off and then she'd knock me off and then I'd knock her off again. Then she'd bank, 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 bank. Went back and forth. And I'm sure each one of us going, damn it. and
then I tried to jump on it and then you were like, get off, Courtney.
I came all the way out here to see it and you had left and you were off of it and I didn't have the numbers here and I was just like, what are you doing? So I was having to listen. I went out several times and listened in my car because I do not have a radio in my house, and the radio app on my phone for some reason wasn't working. So I'm half the time I'm out there in my driveway just going.
I saw you listening to it in your car, and I said, Mike, what are you doing? What are you doing just sitting in your car? I'm listening to the baseball game. So yep. I'm telling you, that was funny. But
so all of that wasn't seen by a lot of people.
It wasn't, but it definitely should have been. Maybe, you know, if you had a chance to watch that, you certainly got your money's worth, right? I mean, you certainly did. If you paid for Flow Sports and you watched that, you got your money's worth. And Hagen Smith getting some honors this week. He was named SEC Pitcher of the Week for that performance.
How nice of them to do that.
No co-insight, guys. No co-insight. So that's exciting. Alyssa says, because Colin Fisher did have a co-insight for his Freshman of the Week. Sorry, Colin Fisher, but Hagen Smith, no co-insight. There you go. Razorback Susie says, Arkansas starting pitchers in Arlington were stunning. They absolutely were. 17 combined innings, gave up just 6 total hits, no runs, 4 walks, 33 strikeouts, and the bullpen was great too. Just got to hit better.
Yeah, that's the other part of this is those 3 starters. I can't remember the last time Arkansas had a big weekend like this. and their starting pitchers gave up no hits. Now, they didn't all go, obviously, this early in the year, you're not going to go 9 innings. You're not going to pitch a no-hitter. But to go 6 innings, 5 innings, or whatever, and all of those, not one of those guys gave up a hit.
It's just, you were just like, yep, that's it.
No, wait, I'm ahead of myself. It's runs. Not one of them gave up a run.
Yeah, they were giving up no runs.
Because Hagen Smith gave up a couple of hits. But you see what I'm saying. You had all 3 starters, none of them gave up a run.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I think that performance as a whole, we obviously take Hagen Smith's performance, but the performance as a whole that Razorback Susie is talking about broke a record, I think. I broke a program record, or maybe even a few. I'll go check that. But I was reading on the Razorback Communications.
That's another thing we're talking about when we're talking about the value of pitching. Because I was talking to a guy today, and he told me, he's a very knowledgeable baseball person. He said, you can't duplicate starting off the season with this kind of staff, with hitting. You can't. I mean, this is where you start. And then you can build your hitting and bring it in. But if you don't start off with this kind of hitting, trying to make up for it with, if you
don't start off with that kind of pitching
and trying to make up for it with hitting, it's not going to work the other way around. He still believes that the hitting will come around, but the pitching is just. And then we haven't even talked about the bullpen, because again, he's got so many options out there. And he went with Faraday to actually close out Oregon State, and I'm sitting there thinking, are you crazy? Because Faraday has great stuff, but he had a history of being wild, and he had runners on second and third. I mean, one wild pitch, and you've lost your lead. He might get 2 wild pitches and lose the game, And what did he do? He struck out the last 2 guys.
Hey, he was the guy for the job. That's what DVH said. And man, I didn't want to trust that either. Like you, I thought it was crazy.
They had the same thing against Michigan.
Yeah.
They're sitting there with the tying runs on third, and you get the strikeout to end the game. So again, the pitching, not just the starting pitching, not just one starting pitcher, but all 3 starting pitchers, and then the bullpen. It was all really amazing.
Absolutely. We have more questions about baseball to get to, though. Razor Alex 88 wants to know, what are y'all's thoughts on Arkansas baseball playing in these tournaments early in the season against really good competition? Really hard to go through those unscathed, but surely it should be beneficial for the team, like iron sharpening iron.
Well, there's no question that the Arlington thing, Dave Van Horn keeps going back there, because what it does, it's not just that you go down there and you play against good competition. Here's the other thing about it. What time of year is it? It's late February. What's the danger? You're going to run into really cold conditions. Well, you can't have that down there if they can close it up, right? And
they did close it up for 1 or 2 of the games.
Okay, so you're not going to have that there. So that's the other value of that in terms of conditioning. But then the third thing about this is, and this goes all the way back to probably when Arkansas used to have all these fans go down to Reunion Arena for the old Southwest Conference basketball tournament. People in Arkansas love to go to Dallas for whatever reason. It's easy to get there. You can drive down on the interstate if you're from Central Arkansas. It's not that hard to come down from Northwest Arkansas. It's maybe 4 hours, 4.5 hours from Central Arkansas, maybe 5 from up here. And you get down there and they have a good time. But look at all the Razorback fans that were down there. I mean, they had crowds of 15, 16, 17,000. And most of those were Razorback fans. So that's another reason why this tournament is so big.
I saw someone on social media, they posted a video of the crowd, and somebody commented, is that Baum Stadium? Like, they genuinely didn't know, and they were like, no, this is Globe Life Field. But
well, that person was clueless.
Well, they were clueless, but it looked like a home crowd for them, right? I mean, it looked like the atmosphere. I think that's what they were trying to say, that this looks like a home crowd.
The only place you'll find more fans than that would be in Omaha.
Oh, yeah.
They'll get 20, 25,000 there, but that's a lot of fans for February in college baseball, and most of that is Razorback fans, and that's another reason why they play down there, is because there's a lot of alums, Arkansas alums in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and there are a lot of people that like to come down there for any kind of game.
And to talk about Razor Alex 88's point, I think all it does is help you. It battle tests you earlier in the season. That way, when you get to postseason play and you're playing in all these different places, you're going to, the neutral site for the SEC tournament, I think that all of this comes into play. Like your guys are like, even your freshmen are like, no, we played in a crazy environment at Globe Life Field early in the season against great competition.
Yeah,
so,
again, I'm looking at SEC standings. And I see all these teams that are undefeated, and then you go back and look who they played. A&M. Who? McNeese?
McNeese.
We got an Aggie on the staff, and I like to have fun with him, because he's an Arkansas guy, too. He's a cool guy. But I like McNeese, and he goes, well, I think they're Sunbelt or something. I don't know.
Oh, no. He's trying to make up for it. He's like, yeah, I know. It was a good team. Okay.
But A&M's numbers are astounding right now because it's who they've played.
It is who they've played. You have to look at that schedule and that strength of schedule when you move forward into SEC play. Small Town Hog 95 asks, do you know if part of Nate Thompson's job as a heading coach is to shake a towel around in the dugout like a madman when we take the field? I'm assuming he's trying to communicate something to the fielders or signal a shift, but I don't think I've seen any other teams do it that way. Could you clarify?
Yeah, when I first saw this question, I didn't have a clue. And we were talking about it, and Alyssa pops up and she knows the answer.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to give myself a pass on this because most of the time when I go to Razorback games, I'm behind the dugout on the concourse or even up in the press box, and you don't see what's going on in the dugout. But she has noticed this, and she's the first one that told us they're positioning the players. And she said Dave Van Horn does it too. He does it with the infielders. Nate Thompson does it with the outfielders, and they do with these color-coded towels, tell them where to move. So they're positioning the outfield. He's positioning the outfield. Dave Van Horn's positioning the infielders to shift based on the batter, who the batter is and what the tendencies are. And just to make sure that Alyssa was correct, I sent a note to Kevin Traynor, who's in the athletic department staff. He's been worked over there for 35, 40 years or whatever. And he's kind of their baseball guy, and he knows everything about baseball. And I tweeted him or texted him a message, and he said he gave me the same answer. Yeah, they're telling these guys with the color-coded towels where to shift to.
Yeah, well, I can't believe you didn't trust Alyssa on that. She knows
I just
her
want
baseball.
to double check.
Okay, all right. I appreciate you for double checking.
I mean, it was something that I had not personally seen.
I hadn't seen it either. When we talked about it, what was it, last week when this question came up, I didn't realize either. I genuinely was like, what do you mean he does that? What is he doing over there? So I'm glad that we got that answer, and credit to Alyssa Orange for knowing the answer on that. Axel wants to know, why hasn't the outfield camera at Baum-Walker Stadium been raised 5 or 6 feet so that TV viewers can actually see home plate? Can't yell at the ump if the plate isn't visible. In most SEC parks, you can see it.
Okay, if you go back many years ago when Jeff Long was the AD here, what they started doing over at Baum Stadium, when it was Baum Stadium and not Baum-Walker, they'd always had a platform out there for occasional TV people would come in and they would put a camera up there, and you need a center field camera. But most of the time, it just sat there. Well, one year in the off season, they made a decision. We got all these TVs in these skyboxes for when the game is on TV, but it's not on TV very often. Why don't we just go ahead and put a closed circuit feed in there for the skybox people? And so they started doing it. And I went up one day and I was just looking at it because I'd heard about it and I knew somebody that had a skybox. So I'm just looking at what they're doing. And the problem was they didn't have a center field camera. They didn't have the over-the-shoulder shot of the pitcher. It was behind the plate. And you couldn't see very good about what was going on with the pitch and the hitters and whatever. So I went to the athletic department. I think I went to Kevin Traynor, as I recall, but somebody. And I said, hey, I've always liked multi-angle feeds rather than me just setting up one camera and having to stand here on my feet for several hours and shoot. And you can't watch a game very well when you're trying to shoot it because you're having to pay attention to other things. I said, what if I brought one of our cameras out there? And I worked at another station at the time, but I said, what if I brought one of our cameras out there before a game, set it up on that platform, and anchored it down, just locked it in with the typical over-the-shoulder shot. And it's just a stationary shot, but you've got all the other cameras to go to when the ball is hit. They said, that's a great idea. I said, I'll do it if you'll let me have access to that feed and no one else. So we were the only television station in the market that got these multi-channel camera feeds. Everybody else had to take their own camera out there and shoot with one camera. And I thought, this is great. But one of the first things I noticed was the platform was too low. Just what he's talking about. You couldn't see the home plate very well. The other thing that he didn't mention is the platform is too far to the right. It needs to go to the left, right up next to the batter's eye, so you get a better angle. You're off too far to the side of the pitch where the pitch goes across the plate. So I went to the athletic department and said, hey, I got a suggestion to make. You need to build that platform. It can't cost that much to build a wooden platform a little higher and to move it a little bit to the left. Jeff Long, the cheapie, wouldn't do it.
No way.
And honestly, not too long after that, we just started taking the feeds anyway, or I got over here and Jason Carroll at the time, who was our sports director, he didn't like to do that anyway. He'd make us go out there and shoot. So I just forgot all about it. And so it's not come up again. But maybe I'll mention it to him again. Hey, we had a Ask Mike question guy, and he points out something that's still been going on all these years. And he's right. If you watch these ESPN3 games that are fed from other stadiums, they have a better over-the-shoulder shot of the pitch and batter.
They do.
Arkansas's platform is too low. It needs to go up, and it needs to move a little bit to the left.
But that can't be that much money. It's 5 or 6 feet. I mean, it's.
You just find somebody with a hammer and some nails and boards and go out there and build it yourself.
I am sure there's some Ask Mike viewers that are like, hey, I'm good at construction. I bet I can make that happen for you guys so that we would have better views.
You're going to have to paint it green to match the batter's eye.
Well, there you go. I bet there are people
Next
out
time
there that would do
you're
it.
out at the game, take a look at that platform. It's too low.
I have never noticed that, but now that somebody has mentioned it, I'm going to take a look at it next time I go to Baum Walker. Let's move to basketball, though, guys. Hot Dogger asks, what has happened to Mekhi Mitchell? He has played some very good ball the last 3 games. I'm wondering what happened to step up his game. Is he the new leader for this team?
Well, he certainly was there for 3 or 4 games, and as to what happened to him, I felt like I'd said all along, this guy's talent. He's just inconsistent. And so what makes him become consistent? And it could be that as the other big guys got injured and were sitting out, he knew he was the guy and he decided to step up. Now, I knew he couldn't continue on the pace that he was on because he was scoring 20 points a game, getting 17 rebounds or whatever. So this last game against Missouri, he dropped off. He only scored about 13 points and had 7 or 8 rebounds, 6 or 7 rebounds.
That's all right, though.
But what you had instead was you had Caleb Battle come out of nowhere and score 42 points. Now this brings up another point. Where's this guy been? Where's Battle been? What was going on early in the year when sometimes he didn't even play? I think what was going on was his defense wasn't very good, and Musselman was making a point. You're not going to play if you don't play better defense.
Well, Musselman said in practice some of these guys were showing out over others, and I wonder if, and I can't remember if he mentioned Battle specifically, but he said, that's why we're choosing different starting lineups. And I think maybe the reason that he was sitting on the bench was maybe he just didn't practice well, and they weren't willing to trust him in a game. I don't know.
It has a lot to do with it. You're adjusting to a new coach, and he's adjusting to you. The problem with this is some of the fans are angry because they say it took too long for this to happen. That it's over. There's no way they can make the tournament. NIT is all they're going to get.
Yeah.
And will they even go to the NIT? Think about this.
I was thinking about it the other day.
They're going to have a decision to make when they get offered, and I think if they keep playing the way they are now, they will get offered. What do? Because you got a fan base that's used to going to the Elite 8 or the Sweet 16. Now are they going to get pumped up for going to the NIT? Or do you just go, you know what, thanks, but no thanks. Our basketball season is over.
That's a good question for the fans. That's a good question for anybody who wants to.
What you typically did as a coach was you went to the thing to get more experience for your younger guys. But these days, sometimes younger guys are gone and you have almost a completely new team.
Well, that's the thing. Do you have guys that are going to stick around for the NIT, or do you have guys that are just going to go, no, I'm good. I'm going to hit the portal. I don't want to really play in the NIT. I mean,
I'm not sure what the rest of this season really. Yes, you want to continue to win, obviously, and they do, and it's important. But somebody told me today, no one should look long term at this basketball team. Just literally take it one game at a time. Because if you look down the road, it's like, no.
Don't look down the road. Don't look down the road. I think it's funny about the Mekhi Mitchell. Your theory of why he stepped up is great because of those big men sitting on the bench. I just like that it came at a funny time. You remember when he was...
I think you may be onto something. The dust up with Musselman.
That's what I was going to bring up. The mouthing off to Musselman
Maybe
against
they got
LSU.
some things straightened out between themselves.
I don't know. It just is funny that it's happened after that game. I just thought that was funny.
Maybe he just said, "You're not going to yell at me anymore. I'll start yelling back at you."
Maybe they got some problems they were dealing with out. I just think it's funny it happened after that. Okay, the real Hoggles? The real Hoggles? Is that what it is?
Or something.
Hoggulies?
Whatever.
That's an interesting name. They ask, how is Arkansas's NIL collective doing when compared to the rest of the SEC, specifically the football and men's basketball program?
Okay, we were discussing this earlier in the whole staff room here, which is our studio.
Yeah, it got pretty heated.
And I think the general consensus is that the NIL is not good right now. And because it's not good, what's going to happen with some of these sports? I mean, baseball may start feeling it pretty soon. Track may start getting worried, you know. There was a time when you got the best track athletes because you had the best track program. If it starts becoming a big deal as to how much NIL money you get offered, kind of what we're being told is there's almost no NIL money for some of these spring or Olympic-style sports or women's sports.
Yeah. Even baseball.
So what's up with Arkansas's fan base that there's an NIL deficit here compared to other schools? And I don't know what it is. I know what I've been told by some people, which is there are a lot of these boosters that are mad right now because they didn't want Sam Pittman brought back, and he was, and so their attitude is, and to me that's kind of stupid because if he stays, you still have to have, they still need to win, so to me I'd be wanting to contribute NIL money, and maybe it is coming now for football. I don't know. We don't keep up with this all the time. It's hard to me. I don't have the time to go over there and start investigating where their NIL money is coming from. But I did hear a rumor that one of the reasons Musselman had his agent looking around was he didn't have enough NIL money, and he was going to either get it or he needed to go somewhere where he could get it.
Well, he lost out on guys he wanted because of NIL, right? I mean,
that was the story we heard.
I mean, I feel like that you don't have to look too far to see that could be true because these guys went to other places that possibly did give them more NIL. I mean, that's what it looked like.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I think, honestly, it's a really interesting question because is it about the money in the state to go around? Look at these other states, maybe Florida, maybe a Tennessee. Is it maybe state income tax, right? Florida and Tennessee, who are big players in NIL collectives and stuff, they don't have a state income tax. Maybe people have more money to give. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, that will be kind of interesting to see going forward what happens there and how does the state kind of navigate this world? Because it's not just art, like it's the state really is what we're talking about, right? So it'll be interesting. Bringing up a great point there. Marty Bird's Proxy wants to know a little bit more about this NIL stuff, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this too, Mike. Can you give your best interpretation of the latest this week's court ruling regarding NIL? How did state laws in Virginia and Tennessee play into this?
Well, again, I've said this before, Tennessee in particular, early on in this NIL thing, they had their state legislatures pass a law saying it was okay to offer money to recruits while they were still recruits. The NCAA, in my opinion, I'm not a big fan of the NCAA, everybody knows that, but they got that part of it right. You should not be able to buy players. It's only when they get on campus for supposedly other reasons, then you can, and I think that's part of what happened to Arkansas. They tried to do the NIL in the spirit of the rule and got caught behind. You got people like Tennessee. Tennessee has a long history of cheating. They've been caught many times, and there are other schools like that.
The McDonald's bags full of money.
Yes. And so, I mean, Phil Fulmer and his safe, remember that story?
Yeah.
And so, it's not a surprise to me that Tennessee did this. But here's what's happened now. The NCAA finally stepped in and started to enforce the one of two rules they have, and the rule was you can't buy players in recruiting. You can only offer them NIL inducements after they're on campus. And Tennessee just went, we're going to do it anyway because it's an antitrust violation. I'm sure they had lawyers that told them that. This is an antitrust violation. So they have filed a lawsuit against enforcing the violation that the NCAA has charged Tennessee with, and they're approaching it from the standpoint of this is an antitrust violation. So what happened the other day with the court ruling is they gave a temporary injunction to Tennessee. And what they said, and this is what you need to understand, now that the court has officially done this, there is absolutely no reason for any school in the NCAA or anywhere else, no reason not to just try to buy any player you've got.
Yeah.
So guess what, Tennessee? You've officially, and Clay Travis, the bonehead, is applauding this. Everybody acts like it's greatest thing that ever happened. Okay, if this isn't resolved, let me tell you, there are a lot of people like me all over this country that loved college athletics because it wasn't what this was about. And even the NFL acknowledged we can't have a product if you're just buying the Super Bowl every year.
Yeah.
And so they instituted the draft and they had collective bargaining agreements and they had, you know, you can't just pay. It's a what do they call it? The thing where
salary cap.
Salary
There's
cap.
no,
You had a salary cap. They did all the right things. These people don't want anything. These Tennessee fans, these A&M fans, SMU fans, all of these schools with money that have always said, hey, it's so perfectly okay. They remind me, I've said it before, of a bunch of rich guys in a poker game in a room, and they tell everybody else, okay, you low-level guys, go over there in the corner. We're going to play our high-stakes game. It's who wins this is the team that has the most money.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do. We're going to outbid each other.
Yeah.
And we're going to bluff you and bluff this guy, and we'll give you $1 million, we'll give you $2 million, and they just go back and forth on this. The only ray of hope in all of this nonsense is that Nick Saban started to get involved last week. And he started making statements about how damaging this is to college football. And then all these jerks are saying stuff like, yeah, the guy that cheated all these years, well, they don't know that he cheated. It was never proven. They never got hit with anything while he was there. But they're now saying, well, it's hypocritical of him to do this. I think the guy's trying to save college football.
I think he is too.
And he's got enough clout that I think he can get together with the right people and they can come up with some solution to this.
Yeah.
I'm not against NIL money. I'm not against players getting NIL money. I'm against a school like Tennessee going, oh, here's this quarterback we want. Alabama wants him too. Alabama, let's see how much Alabama offered him. They call him, well, Alabama's offered me $1.5 million. We'll offer you $2 million. Well, now he calls back, Alabama's offered me $2.1 million. Okay, we'll offer you $2.5 million. And they just start bidding for all these players because they've got unlimited money. They got
no salary caps.
They got boosters. Apparently don't have anything better to do with their money than just throw it at this kind of stuff. And I will stop being a fan of college athletics if it devolves into that.
But I think you're right. With Nick Saban, I know there's a lot of criticism out there about him, but people are calling him, they want him to be the NCAA commissioner of football or the czar of whatever it is.
I'd be fine with that.
I think that would be great. I really do, because I think what he's saying is absolutely how most coaches feel. My dad was livid this weekend over the Tennessee, what they ruled. He's like, this is ruining athletics. This is ruining college athletics.
And yet, it's amazing how they love it. I see these tweets every day coming out of there. I see Clay Travis on there acting like it's the greatest thing that ever happened. I'm thinking, are you people, have you lost your minds?
Yeah.
Do you not understand that the vast majority of college fans of college athletics like it? Because they've always viewed it as a place where you can't buy championships. Yeah. And yes, teams have always cheated, but they've also always gotten caught sooner or later. Yeah. Will Wade. Took a while, but they got rid of Will Wade, didn't they?
They did.
It took them a while, but they got him.
They got him. Mike,
and that's what I'm talking about. Well, now there's no need to get Will Wade. Just let Will Wade cheat. He can offer as much money as he wants. He needs to come back to LSU and say, hey, now I can just offer as much money as you people can give me.
We could get into a full argument about this for all day long, but we do have more questions to get to, Mike, and we're running out of time here. This goes into that. I love this question. Parallax Pig, how soon do you think an athlete will come back from his or her pro career and finish out their college eligibility? They're not amateurs anymore, and the courts keep clipping NCAA ability to manage any rules.
Yeah, he's anticipated something looking ahead that I haven't even thought about, and that would be, I'm going to continue to use Tennessee as an example. Let's say you got a Tennessee running back, decides to come out after his junior year, gets drafted by a team, gets some money, goes through training camp in the summer and then gets cut, or maybe he doesn't like the position or whatever, and he picks up the phone and calls Tennessee back and says, hey, coach, I'd like to come back. How much NIL money will you offer, because I'm not making that much here? And they say, oh, yeah, come back. Well, right now you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
It's against the, but what happens if Tennessee gets their lawyers in on this and goes, oh, well, that's a violation of the antitrust agreement. Oh, no, he can do that. He can do anything he wants. So that's another thing that may start happening. You may see guys go pro sports and come back. Hey, I was pro for a year, I'm coming back because I've still got eligibility. And then maybe they'll attack the eligibility thing and say that's an antitrust violation. You know, if you can get lawyers in on everything, let's just screw the whole thing up with lawyers. That's what we need. Lawyers messing everything up. We need it.
I said this on the show before, but this is why you need somebody who has that ability. And that's why I said, you know, the Supreme Court or someone with that high power to go, hey, we're going to protect you, NCAA.
But the Supreme Court is not doing this. The courts are not doing it. Because they're meatballs who don't understand athletics.
Mike, you are killing it today on the show, Mike. You are killing it. BWS says after yesterday's loss against Vanderbilt, it appears that the women's basketball team will likely miss the NCAA tournament for the second consecutive year. Mike Neighbors runs a system that seems to emphasize too much on shooting three-pointers. We talked about that, and not on rebounding and defense, which seems to be an Achilles heel in ball games. With the addition of Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC next year, do you feel a change in leadership is needed to compete in the SEC?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what I think. 100-year check's the only one that matters. And from what we're told, there's not going to be a change, and there's not going to be a change because of not enough NIL money. The women's athletic programs at Arkansas have virtually no NIL money. There's no Peaches, that's what I call her, Peaches Angel Reese.
Peaches?
There's no, there's no money for people like that because they don't have it. So what are you going to do about Neighbors? You're going to bring in another coach and say, hey, come here, you've done a real good job. And the first thing the guy goes or the woman goes, you don't have any NIL money, I'm not coming there. Yeah. So this is a sort of a look ahead to where we may be headed if this thing doesn't, if they don't stop making NIL such an integral part of whether you succeed or not. Yeah. Nobody's against a certain amount of NIL, but if he makes it to the point where you're winning because of NIL money, then we've gone over the top with this.
Yeah, and to go off of that, it's like if you have a coach that you don't like as a fan base, right? If you're like, hey, we want to be in the NCAA tournament every year with our women's basketball program as well. If you're that mad about it and you're not giving money to these things, I mean, also you kind of have to look at yourself a little bit and go, hey, I'm complaining about this, but I'm also not giving anything to the athletic program to help with this situation, right?
That's exactly correct.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up. WV Hog fan says, and I love this question, in 20 years, no gym back has ever scored a perfect 10 on any event. Is it possible that no gym back has ever deserved a score of 10? Or do you agree with me that the judges appear to be biased or show favoritism towards some teams?
Well, I'm not enough up on gymnastics to comment myself specifically on that.
Yeah.
What I will say is that I've noticed when I've gone to these meets dating back 8, 10, 12 years ago, it seemed like to me that when I would watch them on Arkansas go on the road and it would be on television, then I would watch an Arkansas meet at home. It just seemed like to me the judges were heavily influenced whether you were toward the home team.
Yeah.
Like there was pressure on them. But now we have an ex-Razorback gymnast.
Yeah.
And we've got a tweet. I don't know if you've got it, but
I
you're the
do.
one
I'm
that
going to
looked
pull
this
it up. I saw this on social media. It was back when Arkansas was taking on Florida, I believe, in that meet. And she tweeted out, okay, I am sorry. I know I'm an alumni and biased, but what are these vault scores for Arkansas? This is insanity. Someone responded to that, says, no, you're absolutely right. All the Arkansas vault scores seem low to me. She then responds, like I'm normally realistic with expectations in scoring, especially when I have to put my commentator hat on. She also works for, she does broadcast with the SEC, but this is just getting crazy. And what I will say to that tweet is I like that tweet of hers because I've noticed that when I've watched the meets, the judge or the commentators will go, man, the judges are going to score them so high on this. That floor routine was perfect. That could be perfect 10 territory for them. Then they'll get the score back and it'll be like 9.875. Not even a 9.9, you know? It's like 9.875. It just feels like, and I don't know if this is how the team feels, but it's like, it feels like there's just, for Arkansas, they just don't want to give them a perfect 10. They're giving perfect 10s out to LSU, to Florida. They're giving these perfect 10s out, and they're not giving any to Arkansas. And Arkansas's floor rotation is one of the best in the country.
And I enjoy watching gymnastics, but one of the things that has always bothered me about it is it's a sport where people vote, in effect. You know, it's not really voting. You're writing a score down. But you know how I hate voting.
Yeah.
I don't like voting for the national championship, who gets in, who doesn't. I like a system. We talked about this the other day, the new system, and how many teams we're going to get now. 5 championships, 5 champions of different conferences will automatically get in. I like that. I like automatics. But I would like to say, okay, let's get top 3 SEC teams, top 3 ACC teams, top 3 Big 10 teams, top 3 Big 8 teams, Big 12
teams.
Big 12 teams, and those all get in. Let's expand to 16 and then have some other random things there. Maybe you can put some other champions in there. I don't like voting, and that, in effect, that's what happens in gymnastics. It reminds me of the Olympics when I used to watch as a kid, and I'd watch boxing, and you'd have some guy go out and beat the fool out of some other guy. And I wasn't necessarily the American boxer versus the Japanese boxer or whatever. You just watch somebody, and you'd think, man, he just beat that guy to a pulp, and then the judging would be ridiculous. And you'd be going, well, where did they come from on that?
Yeah.
So this is the problem with gymnastics, is this subjective sort of the way they score these various events. And it leads to frustration.
And that's what I get frustrated about with it, because I actually was asked to judge a gymnastics meet one time, and I thought that was crazy because I'm not a former gymnast, I'm a dancer, and they go, well, you can judge and give your perspective on like style points. And it was a little gymnastics meet with little girls. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't like the SEC or anything like that. But I noticed that when I would talk with the other judges who have actually competed in the sport, I would go, why are you judging them like that? That was really good. Like, I liked how this, and they were like, I didn't like it. That's what they could give me. It wasn't that they didn't do, I didn't like it.
Sort of reminds me of these shows on TV where they have these chefs on here, and then they have these wannabe chefs.
Yeah.
They just crucify these people. There's this poor girl, and she's baked this cake, and she's so proud of it, and then the judge goes, it tastes terrible, and you didn't put enough in there, and she's just crying over there. And you're like, boo, I hate this stuff.
Razorback Born 75 says, I just read an article about allowing fans to be part of practice, possibly charging $5 or $10 for membership to our new collective. NIL would benefit, but would there be some kind of violation by doing that? Would a coach be willing to open up for the NIL?
It would be a violation. Now, that doesn't mean that some school won't go, hey, we're going to do this to raise money, and guess what? If you try to enforce it as a violation, we'll sue you. So we may see that. I don't know, but I don't think Arkansas would do it. And most coaches, for very good reasons, are not going to open up their practices to the fans because it's too cluttered. In the old days, when Bud Walton, Nolan's teams worked out in Bud Walton, they didn't have a practice facility. He let fans come in there because they could sit up in the stands and not bother anybody. Same thing with football. If they're working out on the field, you could theoretically let people sit up in the stands. And sometimes that's happened in the past, but coaches generally don't do that anymore.
Yeah, they don't, and it's kind of a bummer too, because I know a lot of fans want to go see those practices, but to the fans who are like, hey, I wish we could go see practices. Why wish we could go see practices too?
Because we don't either.
Sometimes we don't get to go see them either. So I understand your frustration there, but we are also frustrated in the media with that. Dr. Strangepork wants to know, and I love that we're ending on this. This past weekend results, which was the most. This past weekend results. Okay, I'm going to reword this question real quick. Dr. Strangepork wants to know, out of this past weekend's results for the Razorbacks, which was the most impressive event? Men's and women's SEC track championships, Heron's perfect game, Hagen Smith's dominating 17 Ks, baseball starting pitchers dominating, record crowds at Bogle, or all of the above?
You could say all of the above. I would go with Hagen Smith still because of what I explained earlier with who he was pitching against.
Okay.
But a perfect game, anytime you pitch it against anybody, that's impressive.
That was the second time in program history.
Yeah, so I would go with that being just behind that.
Okay.
And then I would go with He didn't even mention the 42 points that Caleb Battle scored.
And he didn't mention the Gymbacks beating Kentucky for the. It was their highest ranked win since 2016.
Yeah, and a rare win where the other team scores 197 and you beat them.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen very often.
No.
So all of those were impressive too. It was just a good overall weekend. But again, as much as that was fun, I still got more reaction on social media to the negative, the poor hitting.
Oh my
They're
goodness.
still upset about that. So
Really?
it's the Mousetown Legion. They want this team to hit better.
The Mousetown Legion. I have to say, though, it's really hard to give the best one because even with SEC track and field, you know what was so impressive about those wins? I know track and field just dominates. I mean, they really do. This was the women's 10th consecutive SEC indoor title, the men their 5th. What was impressive to me, it wasn't just that it was like a close battle between them and the second place. They beat out the second place on either team by plus 50 points.
Yeah.
That's impressive, especially when you talk about SEC
The reason
and
it
the
wouldn't
conference.
get listed up with the others is because it happens all the time. So
It's
it's
because
a good
it
problem to
happens.
have. It's a good problem to be so good that when you beat the snot out of people and totally dominate, everybody just goes, oh yeah, okay.
I thought it was still pretty cool. It would be really hard for me to pick one. I give them all equals because they were all just so awesome. And it's awesome to see Arkansas dominating and having such a dominant weekend in pretty much every single sport. So
let's hope that this weekend it happens too.
I would love that.